I was offered the opportunity to start writing an opinion column for the Chicago Sun-Times. And I don't know that the weight of that even fully hit me in that moment, but the experience of seeing my name and my little photo and headshot in print on page 2 of the newspaper and recognizing I was 28 years old at the time. A woman hadn't been on that page, let alone a young woman. I think seeing that really did, you just have that like gobsmacked reaction of like, wow, I can't believe that I'm doing that. Somebody's doing it and it's me.
This is Mind the Ceiling, the show about trailblazing women shattering boundaries. These are the candid conversations that dig into what the journey to finding purpose and climbing to the top of industries is like. All of the victories, hurdles, bumps and bruises, and celebrations along the way, and the tools you can use to be the next ceiling breaker. I'm your host, Tamara Lane. My guest today is Debra Pickett, award-winning television and print journalist, founder and principal at Page 2 Communications, and publisher of De Novo Business Brief. Not only was she the first woman to have her own opinion column for the Chicago Sun-Times, she continues to be a trailblazer across media and communications. And this is how she describes her journey to finding purpose.
Twisted. It was a long, complicated journey for sure, with lots of twists and turns.
What would you say your purpose in life is?
Oh my goodness, that is a big question. You don't mess around. I think my purpose in life truly has been about making opportunities, taking advantage of all of the luck and opportunities that have come my way and paying that forward and making opportunities for others, especially women, frankly, but anyone who I can lend a helping hand similar to the kinds of many hands up that I've received over the course of my life. I've really come to see that as my mission.
And she has used her purpose to disrupt an industry dominated by male voices for decades, if not centuries. So I want to talk about this big moment that you had. Was there a moment one time that you remember breaking that glass ceiling barrier?
I've been lucky enough to do that a couple of times in my career. I think my first true experience of that was as a reporter, seeing my name and my little photo and headshot in print on page 2 of the newspaper and recognizing I was 28 years old at the time. A woman hadn't been on that page, let alone a young woman.
I mean, that's incredible. And you think about it now and you don't really realize that women haven't been influential in the media for that long, right? I mean, it has been a boys' club for a very long time. And so to be on that opinion page, to have your own column is gigantic. Tell me another one.
So that was a big one for sure. And I think, since then, I've gone on to do a couple of other things. I've started a business, and the business that I'm in focuses on serving large law firms, and the legal profession is another one where you have tons of women going into it, tons of women in law schools and doing really interesting work. But as you get further and further sort of up the career ladder to the top of the profession and the elite sort of senior partners, managing partners, law firm leaders, it's very rare air for a woman to be in. Even today, when I find myself, being the only woman in a room because I'm consulting with multiple managing partners and realize that they're there because they value my expertise.
But what exactly was the room Debra was in? Let's dive in to see what she does on a day-to-day basis to break ceilings. And so I want to talk about your company that you founded.
Page 2 Communications is a consulting firm that serves law firms. We are a boutique PR and media strategy firm. We work with law firms and lawyers who are interested in how they're positioned with the media and how the media and the public, and particularly the business community in most of their cases, perceives them. So we do everything from coaching law firm leaders in how to be interviewed and how to deal with the media in that way. We help them write their press releases.
To people from the outside looking in, being a founder, having a company that does, media strategy and PR sounds super glamorous, but I want to get real. On a day-to-day basis, what does your job entail? Like, what does your day look like?
Well, I mean, right now I'm talking to you from, upstairs in my house, so that's not super glamorous. This last year has been anything but glamorous for sure. But my time is generally split between really working with law firm leaders in a very one-on-one way, coaching them through a communication question that they might have, whether it's a big meeting, that they're presenting internally and they need to talk to their staff about something, or a media interview that they're doing with a reporter, or even just a marketing or outreach campaign. And I'm working with them kind of one-on-one to help them shape their ideas. Because I'm the founder, I'm sort of the face of the company. So I'm doing our business development work as well. So I'm often out trying to speak to different legal industry groups and, kind of put our name forward. And then the other half of it is just really the work of managing and supervising the team. So as they're writing materials and putting things together, I'm often reviewing and editing lots and lots of documents.
It sounds like it's like a 20-hour day.
It's about that.
And talk to me more about those feelings. Like when you're in that room, what are you thinking?
I mean, it's funny. Sometimes I'm in a room and it's like, there are more people named Michael in this room than there are women. Like, it's just, the lack of diversity in some of these spaces is just so stunning that you can't help but notice it. And so sometimes that takes just truly a physical form where you realize, I'm 5'2", so I stand out or not in a number of ways, usually in those conversations. So sometimes that takes the form of a little bit of maybe imposter syndrome, where you wonder, like, well, why am I here? How is it that I am so different from all of these folks? But mostly, I think it takes the form of just a heightened awareness of knowing that you are sort of representing a whole class of other folks who aren't in the room with you. And so you feel that sort of added responsibility for being at the top of your game and delivering excellence, because it's not just coming from me, but it's coming from me kind of as a representative of someone who's a little bit different in perspective from them.
But to truly understand what has driven Debra's mission for creating a better world through journalism and communications, we have to go back all the way to her hometown.
I grew up in central New Jersey, just about 20 minutes outside New York City. And you could see the Twin Towers actually from the table I sat at in biology class. Most of our families, there was one parent who was commuting into the city for work on a regular basis. And as soon as you were old enough to hop on that New Jersey Transit train yourself and get into the city, that was what you did. So, New York was really, in many ways, kind of the center of my universe. We were, a typical sort of suburban bedroom community in every sense. I shared my high school photo, and actually one of my young colleagues said, "Tell us you're from New Jersey without saying you're from New Jersey," because there was a lot of big hair, the 80s and 90s. John Bon Jovi actually grew up in the town next to mine. So
Red Hook, right?
Yeah. Big claim to fame for us. We're pretty proud of that association. But, New Jersey, for all the sort of knocks we make on it, I realize now in retrospect was an incredibly diverse place. Right in that central corridor where I was growing up, you had Princeton University and Rutgers University. You had Johnson and Johnson and AT&T and all these corporations that were attracting global talent from all over the place. And so, my street growing up was like the UN. The family across the street from us was from Spain. Next door from us was from the Philippines. A couple doors down, Jamaica, like just truly all over. And I really thought that the world looked like that. So I was shocked later on to find out that was quite unusual. But that was what I grew up with, was a multiplicity of languages and cultures kind of all thrown together and then going to the mall together.
The mall rats, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so how did your high school experience shape your career journey ahead?
I was that high school kid who was just involved in everything. I mean, I ran for class president every year and finally won. People just got tired of it, I think, by senior year. I was the editor of the newspaper. I was an editor for the literary magazine. I was constantly busy and volunteering for more and more things. And didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in life, but just wanted to be constantly on the go and, constantly have my hand in whatever seemed interesting at the time.
And was there a main subject or topic that you just were drawn to?
I was really interested in politics from an early age. I'd love to read political biographies. JFK was a big hero of mine. I mean, it's just the idea of someone so young and dynamic in a leadership position. I found that a very sort of romantic notion.
And Debra started flexing her leadership muscles as soon as she could.
I was our school district's high school representative to the Board of Education. And so I got to sit in on all the district Board of Ed meetings as a 17-year-old, I guess. And, I loved those meetings. People just looked at me, my peers just looked at me like that was just, I was like from the moon. Like, how could you volunteer to spend a night sitting in the gym with, these old people complaining about the curriculum? So I think more than anything else, it was like, I was dying to sort of get into some adult spheres of politics and policy.
But sometimes things don't go as planned, and it's how we pivot that defines our success.
I mentioned that I had this kind of obsession with JFK and wanting to follow in his footsteps. So naturally, the only place that I could possibly imagine going to college was Harvard, and I didn't get in. It was like, I did everything right. I was a straight A student. I was class president. I was newspaper editor. I was all the things. And I didn't get in. And, I think that was like the first time that I was like, they said no. What now? And that was really, I think, it sounds so incredibly arrogant in retrospect. I don't know what I was thinking, that I was, 100% entitled to this, that it should have been a sure shot. But I had really convinced myself that was the only path. And so I was pretty devastated when I realized I wasn't going to be showing up there freshman year.
And so what was your reaction? What did you do after that? And where did you end up going to school?
So I did okay. I ended up going to University of Pennsylvania, and I had a wonderful experience there. I loved living in Philadelphia, and I had so many great experiences and opportunities there. Now I can't imagine it having been different, and I can't imagine anything having been better than the experiences that I did have there. But it took me a little while, I think, to shake that one off and recognize that, maybe there were other possibilities that were still open to me.
And Debra explored one of those possibilities, helping her find what makes her tick.
I got really involved in campus politics, and I was involved in a campus women's organization. I loved being involved in something that put young women forward as leaders and was really focused around our voices being heard. I helped organize Take Back the Night rallies on our campus, which were kind of a new thing at the time. And the experience of being surrounded by other young women, some of whom were speaking publicly about experiences for the very first time, was so powerful to me. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that it would involve lifting up other women, and it would involve words and stories and using my voice to help others find theirs. Because those were some of the greatest experiences.
Is there anything that you gained or learned in college that you've taken with you and it's been a useful tool that's helped you with your career?
I think the experience of being at a large university and particularly one with an elite reputation is so humbling, and it's designed to be that way. So I remember my class came together, the class of 95, for freshman convocation. And the speaker, instructed us to kind of look around the room and take in, who was in our class. And they started naming like all the qualities of people that were in our class. And it was like, there were 500 some former class presidents and 800 some, former class newspaper editors. And like everything that you thought you were was not unique at all. There are 17 of you who hold patents, and it's intimidating. But then I think when you start to sort of find your groove and find places where you can thrive and be successful, that's the life lesson, is that even in that deep a pool, you're not going to be number one at everything. You're not going to be the tops, all around. But you can find something, and you can find that track if you just dig into it.
Digging in has been a key strategy for Debra. From her schoolwork to advocacy, once she was interested in something, she seemed laser focused on accomplishing it, which is funny that she didn't immediately graduate and jump into what would soon become her lifelong passion.
I wish I could say that I did have an aha moment. It certainly is something that I had always pursued at various levels, what we now think of as the dot-com bubble. And I just thought the experience of being part of some of that, I was part of an early startup. I started writing about that, and initially just sharing that, in like chain emails with friends and things. Here's this crazy thing that happened at our startup today. And a couple folks, who were on that email chain thought that those stories were funny and entertaining. And somebody suggested that I should send one to a magazine editor. And I did on a lark, and it got published. It had to be published anonymously because I was still working for the company that I was writing about. So, I couldn't even put my name on it or put their name on it at the time. That was my break. It started with a couple of those like anonymous articles, and then that led to other editors wanting to know who this random anonymous person was. And from there, I just kept going.
Oh, I love it, because so many people that want to break into journalism are like, how do you do it, right? Because there's so many people that want to do it. What advice do you have to people who want to break into the news industry?
I do think that to some degree, the best advice is just do it. If you feel called to write and tell stories, write and tell stories. And if your platform is your social media account, as opposed to the New York Times, well, so be it. If you have interesting stories to tell and you're producing great stuff, put it out there and let people engage with it.
When opportunity knocks, answer. And for Debra, opportunity didn't happen the way she expected.
My first front page story was about internet chat rooms, and kids being approached by predators in internet chat rooms. And the reason I got to write the story was because I was the only person who knew how to sign on to one.
Oh my God.
So it was, on one hand, it was incredibly humbling to be part of people who are writing the first draft of history, right? Who are just, in the midst of all of the breaking news that's happening all around you, and talking to famous people and notable people, all the time. And then at the same time going, well, wait, I know something that you don't know. I know how to do something that you don't know. Like me being, 10, 20 years younger than you, I have some value to add here because you don't actually understand what's going on in my cultural life right now. That was great. That was a truly empowering position to be in.
And that empowering position led to dynamic conversations that would change history.
I interviewed a number of famous athletes and actors and authors and, all kinds of folks. I interviewed Madeleine Albright, and, she talked about her experiences as a UN ambassador and Secretary of State, and, talking about sort of just having that front row seat to history. She was incredibly open and approachable, and was just really interested in sitting down and like telling me a funny story about when Yasser Arafat was sitting in her backyard. And, I think things like that just blew me away. I had to pinch myself that, I was having this conversation. The other one that really continues to resonate with me to this day was I did a number of stories with Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett Till's mother. And she was in her late 80s when I met her. And the Department of Justice was just looking at reopening some of the civil rights era murder cases, and re-looking at the Till case and looking at whether there was a possibility of bringing new charges, civil rights related charges in that case. And, I sat down with her to talk about her son's story. And, in sitting with her, I had that connection to that moment in our country's history, her personal history. And it just was so close to me, and feeling like that I had the opportunity to then share that with a new audience, and to have had some small impact in getting some of those cases reopened and relooked at. And, that's the most important work that I'll ever have the chance to do.
That is incredible. And just so, so inspiring to be able to, with the news, there's many careers that can do this, but with the news, you have the ability to change and impact lives. And it's just a phenomenal gift. But in the news, just like other bureaucracies, there's ways to navigate the system. And sometimes, there's ways that you can handle situations that can really help elevate your career. Do you have any tricks or any strategies that you use when, approaching how you grow in your career or navigate difficult situations, difficult coworkers, difficult bosses?
It was an early career experience for me. And at the time, my philosophy was very much just like sort of put your head down and do good work. And that should be enough. And I think, the more I sort of grew up in that position, as I've grown in my career, I've come to understand that there is more to it than that, that there is an aspect of self-promotion, advocating for that work with the editors and publishers, and making sure, for example, that that your piece got featured on the front page. I probably didn't do enough of that. And if I could go back and do anything differently now, or you were talking about whispering in your younger self's ear, those are the kind of tips that I would give her, is like, hey, go into the managing editor's office and just tell him what you're working on so that he knows how cool it is, because, he's not going to know otherwise.
No, that's so important, and something that I wish I would have done too.
Right.
And you think about this later, but you mentioned something really important too, which is about relationship building. Any tips on ways to do that sort of relationship building?
The way to feel better about it is to do it in an authentic way. And so to find common ground and common interests and talk about things from the perspective that are important to you. And, when I think about it now, my presence in that newsroom as a 20-something woman actually was pretty valuable to our publisher. Trying to sell newspapers and sell advertising in newspapers means speaking to broad demographics, and speaking not just to 50-year-old white guys.
Self-promotion is a challenge many women face. So I had to know, how was Debra able to overcome it?
So I think if you can think about it from that perspective, in terms of what's the shared need to communicate some of this information, or how can I help myself, but also help you and help the business, and talk about it that way, then I think you can maybe carve out some of those opportunities and conversations in a way that feels a little less icky than just being a total sort of self-promoter.
All of the little lessons, tools, and skills we learn as we crisscross the winding road that is leading us to our purpose builds all the necessary skills we need for when we finally launch out on our own to build a company. And for Debra, that happened in 2011.
It was certainly not something that I ever planned to do or saw myself doing. I had my kids in 2006, 2008, and 2009, 3 boys in the space of 3 years. And so obviously yeah, right. That's when my hair went gray. That was obviously life-changing in all kinds of ways. And, just not a life that was going to be sustainable for also working on a daily deadline at a busy big city newspaper, and being the kind of parent that I wanted to be at the same time. So I started looking for ways to do things differently, and looking for ways to use my skills in different environments. And I initially went to work for another PR agency, and learned the business that way. And certainly going into that experience, I would never have thought I should start my own. But after a year of it, and my husband is an entrepreneur and has that mindset. So he, I think, pushed me a little bit too in that direction. And if you can do it, maybe I can do it. That I was just inspired to try to build something for myself. I couldn't find exactly the thing that worked for me in terms of letting me excel professionally, but also live the kind of life that I wanted to live. So I made it.
And so was there a moment where, building a company is fast and furious and 24/7 and, you're doing so much, but was there a moment where all of a sudden something clicked and you were like, yes, this is it. It is doing well.
I think getting the first client, you're like, shoo, okay. Getting the second client, you're like, oh. So I think that was one thing, signing up a couple of clients, but then, hiring 1 or 2 people too, when it feels like, okay, this is not just me and my own practice, but this is truly going to be a team that I'm going to build. Those were some big milestones for sure.
But I wanted to dig into some of the skills she learned. As a serial entrepreneur and journalist, I needed some details.
I am a big list maker. So when something seems just unquantifiably difficult, sitting down and kind of breaking it into its component steps and making a checklist for myself that I will have the thrill of crossing off at least a couple of those initial steps. That's going to be enough of a little dopamine hit to keep me going through some of the harder things. That's a tactic that really works for me. And I've recently transitioned from having just a handwritten list to using an online tool, Asana, for project management, which I love. It really does give me the little thrill of clicking the checkbox and like seeing a happy little rainbow appear after I've checked something off. That's a big one for me. I feel like if you can get your arms around it, to make it into a list and break it down into steps, then you've really gone a long way towards getting it done.
And any tricks for working with groups?
We spend a lot of time when we're working with groups trying to navigate everybody's status. Is it okay to disagree with that person? Is that the person who thinks that they're in charge? And I think the way around getting lost in some of those dynamics is to just be really clear about your purpose. And to know that, you don't have to like each other. You don't have to be friends.
There's something curious that I've been exploring, and I want to hear what you have to say about this, which is words are so powerful. And there's a lot of words that are used to describe women that are, goal-oriented. And so is there a word that you've been called that is actually you find to be one of your most powerful assets?
Oh, I've been called so many of those words. I think about women now, whether on social media or in the traditional media, writing opinion pieces and the backlash that they get for just daring to be a woman in public expressing their opinion. I don't know that I would be made enough of strong enough stuff to take all the backlash that they sometimes get. I'm really fortunate to have been writing my column before Twitter. I got enough just email and regular postal mail of people telling me to shut up, sit down, make me a sandwich, but I've never shied away from being seen as assertive, opinionated, aggressive, competitive. That's just who I am. And I guess I always knew that I couldn't help it. So I might as well just lean into it.
I love it. I love it. And it's funny because, we've talked with other guests about bullying. And I was asking this question early on were you ever bullied in high school? And what I'm seeing is the reaction is more, cyber, social media trolls are what is happening now. And it's such a problem. Have you ever experienced social media trolls, and do you have a tactic for dealing with them? I know you're on Twitter, so.
Yeah, I am on Twitter. I don't have a tactic for them other than just, I think that the beauty of being the age that I am and the place that I am is just that I can truly say that I've arrived in a place where it rolls right off. I am comfortable in what I've achieved and what I know and what I think. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that is hard won wisdom to come by any sooner, unfortunately. But it's the truth. My husband sort of laughs about this when I get myself into little controversies. He feels sorry for the people who are going to try to argue with me. He's come to recognize what an exercise in futility it really is.
Be comfortable with who you are. if we could take away just one thing to internalize from this entire journey, that would be it. If you could go back and tell yourself at 15 anything, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I think probably just take your time. It all works out in the end. So I want her to know that even if she doesn't have immediate success today, it's all going to work out.
Do you have any advice for young women who want to pursue the same path that you had or that you have?
I think that I could not have imagined sort of this point. I won't even say it's an end, because I think I have some more adventures planned even beyond where I am now. But I couldn't have begun with the end in mind. When opportunities presented themselves, if they seemed interesting and they seemed challenging and they involved people that I wanted to work with or causes that I wanted to be a part of, I embraced them. And it clearly did not seem linear at the time. And it didn't always seem like this is the next logical step on that career path. But in retrospect, now everything has built up to where I am. So I don't think it was possible to have plotted the course. And I'm so glad that it had some twists and some detours. Those were some of the best parts.
And that is it, the unfiltered, undeterred journey of Debra Pickett, a passionate trailblazer leading the media and communications industry. And now it's time for the Mind the Ceiling Mindful Minute with Anika Uden, our podcast apprentice and potentially your company's next CEO. Anika, take it away.
What book changed your life or impacted you the most?
For Whom the Bell Tolls, Ernest Hemingway.
Ooh, interesting. Who is your most influential role model?
Oh my goodness. Corazon Aquino, president of the Philippines, woman leader, and just truly inspiring.
I know you mentioned Asana earlier, but what organizational tools or tool could you not live without?
Yeah, so Asana is definitely one. And then I do still have a physical bullet journal that I keep with me. And well, I'll tell you if you promise not to tell anyone, it's got all my passwords written down in it. So if I lose that, it's all over. I can't get into anything else.
Got it, yeah. What do you do to find calm or to just like chill out?
So I am also a big fan of the Calm app. I listen to the Daily Calm and do a little morning meditation on there pretty much every day. The other night, I was up in the middle of the night and worried about a bunch of work stuff, and they had a little go gently back to sleep meditation that totally did the trick for me. I wish I could say it was something that didn't involve me picking up the phone, but in fact, it's a great tool that I have right at my fingertips on my phone.
Yeah, that does sound really helpful. If you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
Well, I have given a lot of consideration to this question, and my superpower would be that I could instantaneously just snap my fingers and make anything in front of me clean. So from like an untidy room to like an environmental disaster, my superpower would be that I could fix it.
And that's it for the Mindful Minute. That's a fantastic superpower.
That's a mom of 3 teenage boys superpower.
And that is our show, Mind the Ceiling. And here we don't mind the ceiling because it's meant to be broken. Follow us on social media and leave us a review wherever you listen to this podcast. And we love to hear from you. Hit us up on social media. You can ask our guest questions or let us know your successes. We would love to cheer you on your journey. And with that, what makes us excited about the future?
So I have 3 kids who are 12, 13, and 14. And they and their friends are so cool. They are so smart and so kind to each other in a way that, when I think about sort of the just name calling and playground taunts and little things that kids subjected each other to growing up, my gosh, their generation doesn't do that. They just are so inclined to support each other and lend a hand to people. I'm thrilled and inspired by them every day. They're such good friends to each other. I can't wait for them to take over the world. It's we have all the stuff that we've messed up. I feel like they are the folks who have the capacity to fix it. I am so inspired by what I see in Gen Z behind us, because I think that they have completely just thrown the notion that that's purely adult territory completely out the window. They understand that if anyone is going to take on the challenge of climate change, if anybody is going to fix, some of the schisms that have divided us in society, it's going to be them.